So I basically made a rule set, for muskets in America, anything to do with that, two things, because there wasn't any that I really liked. So yeah, I'll be using toy soldiers because I have a lot of different types and a lot of them. Few things that you're gonna need before we start playing is some sort of measurement device that is in inches. Somewhere to roll dice isn't necessary, you just roll it anywhere. Definitely some terrain to add some stuff to the battlefield. Um, Dice, two d6 dice, which means basically dice that are like this, that are six-sided. You can find them pretty much in any board game. Well, there's going to be two sections in this video. One of them is going to be discussing the core rules of the game. The other one is my expansion pack. By the way, all of the stuff, like the rules and the expansion pack, will all be printable PDFs in the description. So if you want to do that, do it. It's free. Yeah. Tell me if it works. I'm not sure if it works yet. The link. Each player will choose one of the following armies. We have the Confederacy, the British, or the Patriots from the Revolutionary War, and the Union. This example, we will be playing with the British versus the American Revolution Patriots. After you choose your army, you have to choose the general. Each army has two generals you can choose from. Each of them are good at certain things. Some cost less to put in your army. Except the Confederacy, they only have one general. In the example of the Patriots versus the British, the Patriot person can choose one of the following generals: George Washington or General Lafayette of the French. They have their own differences, which we'll go over later. In this same example, the British player can choose between General Cornwallis or... what's his name? Oh yeah, Alexander Leslie. Alexander Leslie's on the right. But yeah, they have their own differences. Each army has their own special units, but some units any army can buy. So when you're starting out, two players must decide the amount of points. You use the points to buy your forces in the beginning of the battle. So let's say I want to do a 1,000-point battle. It's going to be bigger than a 200-point battle. But for the sake of this video, we're going to do a 200-point battle because, it's easier to do a small battle for this tutorial. The table on the PDF shows the cost of each person, including regular units. And you see, it says anyone, that means anyone can buy it. But if it says a certain faction, that means only that faction can buy that person. Remember to keep the units together. So if I buy a militiaman, they will stay together in a formation. Remember that the generals also have costs. So yeah, we'll go over the staff ratings later. And when I mean later, I mean right now. And when I mean 200 points, I meant 120. Anyway, what the British player bought with his 120 points was a militia group, which was 20. Then General Cornwallis, which was 45 points. And then a Hessian regiment, which is special to the British side. That's also worth 45 points. Which comes out to a total of 115 points. So he has 5 points remaining, but he can't spend on anything. So there you go. And guess what? Just for this tutorial, the American player did the exact same thing. Special unit, general that actually costs less, and militia. So they spent all their 120 points, by the way. So you choose who goes first, whatever way you want. After that, this person's turn, and this person's turn. Turn to turn. Normal stuff. Say the British person gets first. Oh, and by the way, this is a very small battlefield. You're going to want a bigger battlefield, maybe this entire table. But we're just making it smaller for this tutorial, helping things out. Making it simple. When it's your turn, you can either move the unit, shoot with the unit, charge with the unit, fight back, or stand by with that specific unit. You can only do one of those with that unit, and you order your entire army, by the way. But not all of them get to do stuff. I'll explain. So back to staff rating. Whenever a unit is given an order, you have to roll 2 six-sided dice. And if it is the general's staff rating or lower, the order gets done. If it is higher than the staff rating, then the order is not done and that unit's activation ends. Since it's the British and they have General Cornwallis, he has a staff rating of 9. Let's say I wanted to tell this militia group to move. I'm rolling the two 6-sided dice, and I get a 5 and a 6, which is 11. He has a staff rating of 9, and if you go back to the instructions, it says that the staff rating, if it's higher than the staff rating, it is not done. So since I got an 11, it is not done. They don't do anything this turn, basically. There you go. Now let's say I re-roll, and I get, as you can see, a 6. That is lower than 9. That means that order is done, and then I move them. So yeah, that's how the staff rating checks work. Now let's say this group right here, let's say it's been battling and whatever, and 4 out of their 8 members have died, and they're on half their amount of troops than they originally had. Then they get +1 to staff rolls, which means it's going to be even harder for them to complete staff rolls. And if the general is dead, it's going to be +2, making it harder for staff rolls. So that means that if he dies, then this group over here with all of its troops, let's say, is going to have to get, since it's 9 originally, they're going to have to get a 7 or lower instead of a 9 or lower. And these guys, since they're half and the general's dead, they're going to have to get a 6 or lower. So yeah, the staff checks are there to make sure, to see if the units will follow the orders or not in the chaos of battle. You know, and it makes it even harder for them when the general's dead or when their unit's suffering casualties. That's basically that summary. Let's put everything back to normal for the British. So yeah, let's say that you did the staff check for this guy, and you said, hey, I want him to move, and it succeeds, and we're going to talk about movement now. The movement will be on the unit cards, which we'll talk about later, but the thing you're going to be worrying about is this M logo right here. The number next to it is the amount of inches they can move. So this militia group over here can move 6 inches maximum. Alright, so up to here is 6 inches. So yeah, we're just going to move them there. Make sure you move the entire unit together. So I have moved the militia group from over here to here because their movement is 6. So remember, the movement is different per unit. Different units at different movement speeds, so yeah, keep that in mind. But yeah, that's pretty much how movement works. Pretty simple. Since this unit moved, that ends your activation. Remember, you can either move, shoot, charge, fight back, or stand by. You cannot do more than one action. So that's one action right there, and their activation is done. Then you move on to a different unit and then do the stuff you want to do with them. We will now go over how ranged attacks work in this game. So yeah, he's going to be shooting at these guys. But first, let's see if they're even in range. Go back to the unit card, and right here it says R, which stands for range. This is the amount of inches they can shoot, which is 16 inches. As you can see, these guys are absolutely in range to shoot these elite French soldiers. Definitely. Now, as you can see, there is no cover between them, which makes it easier to shoot. But let's say these guys were behind this house. As you can see, sorry, I forgot a guy. As you can see, this entire group of soldiers is behind this house, and they can't really shoot through the window because no one's close enough to the window to shoot from it. So these guys can't even shoot at these guys. They may be in range, but they can't even see them. Now let's say it was like this, and only one guy could see the group. If at least one guy in the group that's shooting can see the group that they're firing at, and they're in range, then they can fire. Some cover, like this fence, can be shoot through even though it's covered, because obviously you can see through these fences. Back to the original scenario where they're right in front of each other and there's no cover in between them. The amount of soldiers in the group determines how many can shoot. So if the group has a lot of casualties, they'll be able to shoot less because obviously there's less guys to shoot. Like, obviously. Remember to roll the staff rating check if you're going to move, shoot, charge, or stand by. Fighting back, you don't need a staff rating check for that order. Go back to the cards, and if you see a D here, that means how much dice each attacker is going to roll. So this is 1, and since there's 8 militiamen, I'm going to be rolling 8 D6 dice. And now here comes the big roll. Then you're going to go back to the card and look at the GS skill, which stands for gun skill. Now it says 4+. So you look at each dice, and you're going to look at each dice if they're 4+. So, see, this is a 3, which is not 4 and it's not higher. So let's put that away. This is not 4 or higher. This is not 4 or higher. So all of these right here are all 4 or higher. These 2 over here missed. Now let's say that they only had 7 dudes and you'd roll 7 dice instead of 8. Pretty much that simple. Now you're going to keep the dice that actually hit in wherever you're holding it, and then you're going to do this. Then you're going to look at the S, which stands for strength, and that is 4. And then look at the stats for the people you're shooting at, and look at their toughness, which is next to strength, which is a T, and it says 6. The militia has a strength of 4, and the enemy you're shooting at has a toughness of 6. You're going to re-roll these dice. And you're going to be hoping for 5 or more on these. But let's say that your strength was more than their toughness. You're going to hope toward a 3 or more. And if it is equal, then you're just going to roll 3 or more as well. So yeah, there you go. That's how that works. Now that we rolled these, and now that our strength is less than that guy's toughness, we're hoping for 5 or more here. So this didn't go well, this didn't go well, and this didn't go well. So these 3 hits are still lasting on these bunch of checks that we're doing on it. So yeah, these 3 actually went through. And each hit, unless it's artillery, stands for 1 model killed. That was actually a pretty good shot that we did. 3 hits, so 3 models die. And there you go. You just shot some stuff. If you were thinking that, you are wrong. So we got 3 hits. Now we see if the unit can dodge those. We were shooting at some Frenchy boys right here. They have a dodge skill, which is DS of 4+. So we go over to the hits, which is 3 dice, and re-roll them. Alright, this stands for 1, by the way. They're custom dice. But this DS right here is 4 or more. So we look over here. These 2 are safe, which means those 2 don't actually do anything. But one of them is a 1, which means that one guy actually dies. So yeah, there you go. Now let's talk about some modifiers that can change up how good your guys are at shooting. You know, some stuff and stuff. Now let's say that these guys were shooting at these guys if these guys were here. So 3 inches. If you're shooting, 3 inches away from somebody, you get a bonus, for shooting point blank and all. That bonus is that you can attack twice, ranged attack. So if these guys were here, they would shoot and then shoot again because they're so close, stuff like that. This rule does not apply when you're shooting with artillery or when you're shooting with cavalry. Yes, cavalry have guns. Now let's say you're shooting someone from behind, Then you would subtract your gun skill with that person by 1. Now you're probably saying, hey, why would I shoot worse if I'm behind them? And I would say I'm not making it worse because remember, you have to get that or higher. So what it would usually would be 4. Sorry, the camera is not focusing on this. Okay. Would usually be 4, would be 3 now. So you'd have to get 3 or more. So ultimately, it's better to be less when shooting. So yeah, when you're behind them, lower your GS by 1. Now let's say if you were shooting at someone and you can see them, but they're behind some side of, cover, then you would add 1 to your GS. So it would normally be a GS of 4, would now have to be a 5 or more because they have some cover going on, but you can still shoot at them and see them. So yeah, that also applies when you're inside houses and you can see through windows and stuff, or shoot at people who are inside the windows. And that is all the rules for shooting. And don't worry, that is the hardest part of the game. So everything else is easy. I know that was a lot. And now we're going to get into how melee combat works, which is pretty simple. Let's go back to over here with our French line infantry and our British militia group fighting it out. Let's say for this unit's activation, I want to charge. Remember to roll your staff rating check to see if they'll listen to you. To charge, you have to make sure that the person you're charging is within 12 inches or 1 foot of the person you're charging with. Then you're going to roll 2 6-sided dice, and I got 11. That is the amount of inches that these guys will charge towards these guys. And as you can see, moving 11 inches definitely puts me in close combat with them. Now let's say my roll was 2 instead of 9. Then I would have to move 2 inches towards the person I was charging, and that might not get me into melee combat. So you just gotta charge and see how far you get, and once you reach them, you'll enter melee combat. When you're in melee, the only thing you can do is fight back against the other people, and you can only use your melee weapons. You can't shoot, charge other people, or escape, or move, or even do a standby action. All you have to do is fight these guys right here. Remember, fighting back is the only action that does not require a staff rating check. Other people can charge to help out, but that's pretty much it. Now back to these guys who are fighting it out. So these guys who just charged, so this is right after he charged, in the same activation. The unit that charged goes first in melee. When in melee, you cannot move, charge another unit, stand by, or shoot. Once the charging unit makes its melee attack on this guy right after they charge, this guy's activation is over. Then, once it's your target's activation, which is when the player activates this guy, they fight back against this guy, and remember, fighting back does not require a staff rating check. So they fight back, and they can only fight back with melee weapons. Any melee attack is only with melee weapons. If you charge them from behind, so let's say these guys are over here, and they charge them here, right from behind, subtract 1 from the melee skill, which then again makes it better for the attackers who charge them in the first phase of melee. After that, it's going to become your turn again, and then you just use the fight back action to fight back here. Then once it's their turn, they fight back. Keep on fighting back until everyone's dead, basically, or until the person that you charged is dead, or the person who charged you is completely dead. Remember that in melee attacks, you literally do everything. You roll the exact same rolls that you did in ranged combat, but the only difference is that instead of using gun skill, you're just going to replace that with that unit's melee skill. So everything's the same except you replace gun skill with melee skill. So after you charge and you do your melee attack, that consists of knowing how many guys you have, then roll each dude's melee. Then after that, take out any that missed. After that, re-roll it and use the strength and toughness thingamajigger. After that, you see if they can dodge it. And then after that, you remove the people who died. You know, pretty much literally just like that. And remember that cover does not affect anything on melee combat. The only modifier is if you charge them from behind, which, like I said earlier, takes 1 away from melee. skill, which basically makes it stronger, but only for the first thing, which is basically the initial charge. Yeah. Now we'll get into standby, which is the only action we have left to cover. We've already covered the other actions, so we're almost done. Sit tight. Let's say that the Patriots player, when it's their turn, puts this militia group in standby. First, they roll the 2d6 and see if there's staff rating checks to see if they even follow the order. And let's say that they do. They're going to stand still this turn and gain a standby token, which you can use anything, a poker chip or whatever. But I have my own little standby tokens. This is my standby token. It belongs to them now. Now, what does this do? Well, basically, you can use it to spend to reroll any staff checks that you fail with this specific unit. So they're going to stand still for the rest of their activation. And let's say it goes back to the British guy's turn. And then after that, it goes back to the Patriot player. Make sure that unit keeps that token. So wherever they move, you put the token next to them. You know, keep it there. So let's say once it's the Patriots guy's turn again, he wants to use these guys to shoot that general dude. But let's say he rolls the staff check to see if they even obey his order, and it fails. Well, you can spend this token to re-roll that staff check that you failed. So yeah, you spend it. So yeah. Oh yeah. I forgot to tell you, but the D stands for how many dice each member rolls. I think I said that. I don't know. Whatever. Remember that cavalry moves more than other people, which makes sense, but they shoot less because they're riding a horse. Pretty good at melee though, and they follow the same charging rules. But for artillery, it is a little bit different because they move a lot less, but they have a super big range, suck at melee, and they're not very accurate. But for artillery, each hit is worth 2 deaths. So if I only got 1 at the end, it's gonna kill 2 of them. You know, explosions. So there you go. But you only roll 1 dice. So it's 1 dice that counts for 2, if you know what I mean. For engineers, they can build structures for cover that are up to 1 feet long. You know, you don't want them building one big thingamajigger. It takes 2 turns per building, and they have the same stats of a militia. Remember that certain squads have a certain amount of people. They don't have the same amount of people in every squad. Artillery, I think I forgot to say this, but they have 2 crew members and the artillery piece. You have to kill each crew member, and once both crew members are killed, that means the artillery piece is pretty much done for. This is the last thing for the core rule book. The generals. They have their own stats, so they can shoot and stuff, but obviously there's only 1 guy, so it's going to be less accurate. You can see what stats that they'll be using over here. Lafayette has the same exact everything as George Washington, but he has a lower staff rating. So let's use George Washington's ability as an example, because each general has their own special ability that can hurt or help. Like right here, it says that it gives -1 to melee strength to friendlies in a 6-inch radius. So basically, it makes any friendlies in a 6-inch radius from George Washington better at melee. So make sure you look at all of these specials when you're using that specific general, of course. In the beginning of the game, the generals, when you're setting them up, they could be alone, like their own little guy, and wander around, but you could also attach them to squads. Now, how that works is that basically, this guy, instead of getting automatically killed like he would if he was shot outside, when he's a part of the squad, he moves with this squad. And he basically starts suffering damage when everyone else in the group is dead first. So basically, let's say this entire group has died. They'll suffer the pain first and then George Washington. So it's kind of like to give George Washington a little bit safe. Remember that George Washington and every other general has their own firing stuff. So make sure you fire for the soldiers when they're in a group and they're all alive. Make sure you fire for the soldiers first and then the general, because they have different stats. So you separate those shooting phases. All the generals can be attached to infantry, except 2. General Cornwallis can only be attached to artillerymen, and George McClellan of the Union can only be attached to a cavalry group. Feel free to use any game mode. It can be deathmatch, capture the flag, hold the area, or you can use the reinforcements mode to add on to any other game modes, which basically means that you gain points mid-game and you can spend it to buy reinforcement to help in the middle of the battle. Let's talk about Expansion Pack 1, Sway of Battle, which is meant to add more randomness and fun, maybe some realism to battles and weather effect. So what's in this expansion? This expansion is made to make the battles in this game more random. Real war is random too. You do not have to play with these new rules. They are optional. Warning, this expansion can make the game a lot more chaotic. You might also lose quickly, especially if you're not so lucky with the dice. Some random events can be really good, and some can be really bad. This expansion adds weather and its effects on the battlefield. After the players deploy their troops, roll one 20-sided die, also called 1d20, and compare your results with the table below. A 20-sided die is the same die that you use in D&D. The weather effects will last the entire game, and they can determine whether, no pun intended, or not you lose. So let's look at this. So if you get a 1 to 15 on your D20, I got a 16. No, hold up. I got a 19. So if you got 1 to 15, it's going to be a normal battle, no weather effects, good old weather. But sometimes it can be too hot if you get a 16 to 18 on that die, where everyone moves 1 less inch. That's for the entire game. Raining is if you get 19 to 20 like I did. Everyone's gun skills raised by 1, which pretty much means that it's harder to shoot for the entire game no matter how you're shooting, because it's wet and all that stuff. Here's a quote from Total War Napoleon that's really annoying. Wet powder makes misfire as a certainty. He keeps on saying that. Fun. Now we'll get into random events. So every 5 turns, your turn counts as a turn, your opponent's turn counts as a turn. So each round is 2 turns, so 5 turns. Each player will roll 1d6. Got an 8. And we'll compare it with the table below. The player's random event only applies to them. The number of turns waited before a random event can be changed to your liking as long as both players agree. So instead of doing 5 turns, you can do 2 or something. It'll get more random though. So I'm going to show you different options. So if you got 1 to 4, you get promotion, where your general staff rating is increased by 1 for the rest of the game. Then we get demoted, which is the opposite, where your general staff rating is decreased by 1 if you're 5 to 8. Cowards, where your troops cannot charge this turn. They can fight back though, which is 9 to 12. You see, this one's only for this turn, and some of the others are for the entire game. Then we got good logistics, which is if you get 13 to 16. This turn, all of your troops can move 2 inches farther than normal. Great aim, which is result 17 to 18. This turn, all your troops can shoot 2 inches farther. And if you get 20, nothing happens. Remember that each player is rolling this, and that you got to compare the table for each player. So player 1 may have gone an 8, which means that he gets demoted. And the other player could roll a 6, which also gets demoted, so it's different for each player. Let's talk about house rules. Feel free to change the rules to your liking. You might add more weather effects, add more random events, or change the amount of time before each random event, like I said earlier. If you don't have a D20 dice, use an online D20 roller. There's tons of free ones. Crazy events. You can use these random events instead of the normal ones for a wacky experience. This is just for fun. They are also, as the name suggests, crazy and unrealistic. We got an alien beam that fires into the battlefield, killing an entire squad from each side. Thermal snap, which half of the enemy force dies instantly. Assassination, which the enemy general is killed instantly. And bad logistics, where none of your troops can move this turn. So I don't recommend using crazy events, but they could be used for fun. And that's it. You just sat through a random kid talking about a board game he made for 30 minutes or something, and the expansion. So remember, link in the description. Play it, have fun. I really don't care.